It is absolutely unbelievable. You'll be shocked when the truth is revealed.
I tell you, gentlemen, science has agreed that unless something is done and done quickly, man, as the dominant species of life on Earth, will be extinct within a year.
Everything you've ever believed in is about to be overturned. Who decides when it comes to movies what is good or the truth and what's false or bad? The critic?
It stinks. It stinks. It stinks.
The learned scientist fighting the establishment?
A woman has no place on a mission of this kind.
I insist on taking my technician.
You'll take along who I assign.
Don't tell me who I'm going to work with.
Or you, the viewer? Watch, if you dare. Bad movie. Bad movie. Bad movie. And good science. Before we get started, however, grab some popcorn and a soft drink, and maybe a candy bar for your sweet tooth.
We are about to witness the takeoff of the first manned rocket to outer space. We pick up the count. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0!
We're off to visit the planets. There are treats galore in the stars. Venus is loaded with candy, and ice cream is found upon Mars. The soda pop's fizzing on Saturn. When you're thirsty, it sure hits the spot. And Jupiter's really jumping with popcorn that's buttered and hot.
History is rife with examples of how science eventually proved a commonly held belief was incorrect. Many once thought the world was flat. Explorers such as Christopher Columbus proved Earth is, in fact, a globe.
I think the world isn't flat at all. I think it's round like a ball.
Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? He said that the world is round. Oh,
He's crazy, he's mad, he's insane. I think the world isn't flat at all. I think it's round like a ball.
The world's as flat as the brim of your hat, and that is very plain.
I know that I'm right, oh, I know that I'm right when I say that the world is round. Oh, I'm right, I'm right. My thinking is sound and I'll prove the world's round. It won't take very long.
When it comes to bad films, scriptwriters often take license with reality so that the story will be more fantastic.
Flying saucers have invaded our planet. Washington, London, Paris, Moscow are key targets. The whole world is under attack.
As viewers, we're used to suspending disbelief. Let's look at 3 areas where filmmakers often abandon reality. The first, the truth about spacesuits and spacewalks. In the first place, why even wear a spacesuit? Humans live in an atmosphere made up of several gases, the highest in percentage being nitrogen at 78% and oxygen at 21%. Other planets have far different atmospheres, and some, such as our moon, have none at all. Without the protection of a suit, the astronaut will quickly die. A common scene in movies is the need for an emergency spacewalk. The astronaut quickly shrugs into his or her suit and exits the craft into the vacuum of space for an EVA, or extravehicular activity. Here, though, you can see just how long, even in this sped-up video, the suiting up process actually lasts. A process of breathing pure oxygen then follows, because if the body is not purged of nitrogen, decompression sickness will quickly set in. Colloquially, this is known as the bends. Scuba divers suffer the bends when they ascend from great depths too quickly. Nitrogen gas bubbles in the blood expand, causing pain in the joints. A spacewalker, just like a diver, would soon be dizzy and suffer debilitating cramps. Paralysis can occur, and even death might result. After returning inside, a rebreathing period ensues to restore the oxygen-nitrogen composition. Because EVAs can last hours, the entire process can take most of a day. Properly suited, though, astronauts say nothing compares to an EVA. Chris Hadfield, a veteran of 2 spacewalks totaling nearly 15 hours, describes the experience.
You're in the airlock and everything's closed out and you've been doing this multi-stage process, and you manually, you've depressurized it so that you're at the vacuum and your spacesuit is working properly, and it gets so quiet. because the pressure goes down to really low pressure in your suit, so it's peaceful. All you hear is yourself breathing. And then you turn this huge crank to open up the hatch, and then you manually lift it, like taking a manhole cover off, and chunk it up into place. And then you still can't see anything because there's a fabric cover to keep the temperature, so you got to reach around and then do all this Velcro and push this thing out of the way, and then suddenly you're in space. Visually, it's everything. The world is there, pouring by at 8 kilometers a second in all kaleidoscopic, unbidden glory, and the universe is right there on the other side of you. Everything, forever, is right there, and you're like holding on with one hand in the middle. It's phenomenal. I really like it. It's a lot of fun walking in space, and I was lucky enough to be outside for about 15 hours over 2 spacewalks, which is 10 times around the world.
Meanwhile, on the silver screen, let's see how this translates. Grab your snacks and sweets. Astronauts in movies pretty much always have spacesuits. Their designs vary depending on the wardrobe designer. What looks good on the screen, though, might not be functional, and vice versa. Then there are times when the suits are good, but a crucial detail is missing. The helmet isn't fully closed, at which point the suit isn't much good. But the director certainly doesn't want to obliterate an actor's face. This was the case in Robinson Crusoe on Mars. The astronaut's helmet is open, but at the same time, he's greatly concerned about the lack of air.
How long can a man stay alive?
My 2 most difficult problems are air and water. I have, with what's left in my tank and 1 reserve cylinder, enough oxygen for, about 60 hours. Of course, once my air gives out, water won't matter.
And oh, by the way, the monkey, he had his own suit, also open to the elements. At the time of this movie in 1964, scientists had not yet studied the Martian atmosphere in depth. Now we know that on the red planet, carbon dioxide is the highest percentage component in the atmosphere at 95%. By the way, CO2 is what humans exhale. Rebreathing this is deadly. Molecular nitrogen is next at 2.6%. Carbon dioxide makes up 96.5% of the atmosphere of Venus. Nitrogen makes up most of the rest. On Venus, an astronaut would not survive very long in the standard spacesuit.
On strange, foreboding, unknown soil. You are there as the deadly, crawling lava attacks the astronauts.
Venus has 92 times the pressure of what man experiences on Earth. That means there are more than 1,200 pounds of pressure on every square inch of a suit. The pressure would quickly crush the astronaut. The bugs get bigger, and the people, well, usually they get smaller. A staple of science fiction involves normal, everyday creatures that suddenly grow to gargantuan proportions. Often, the plot involves man messing with nature.
Repeat, condition red, drain 267 is the target area.
What filmmakers fail to take into account, however, is the physics of mass, whether it be human, insect, or otherwise. The physics are pretty intricate. First, the atoms that make up the living entity remain constant. Thus, you cannot just adjust one aspect and expect the rest to fall proportionally in line. If you shrink a creature, the mass remains pretty much the same, which means once shrunken, the mass would make it virtually impossible for the creature to move because of the mass packed into a much smaller package.
4 men and a beautiful girl, off on a fantastic voyage, actually entering inside the human body, exploring an unknown universe, unknown dangers.
They're tightening! I can't breathe!
24 seconds left.
After that, you're in danger of attack.
Come on.
It's sheer suicide for all of us.
You are there with them, sharing a breakthrough in motion pictures.
Conversely, if an entity grows to an immense size, the mass, still remaining the same, would not grow proportionally, and thus be unable to support the new dimensions. In reality, then, Rick Moranis in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids wouldn't be telling his wife, "Honey, I shrunk the kids," without explaining the consequences that would likely cause their deaths. Sometimes in films, aliens come quietly under the cover of darkness, deep in the night, and do their abducting. Other times, their technology, light years ahead of anything on Earth, fails and they crash, and always spectacularly. Yet, somehow, they survive. Without a doubt, those intact invaders now set out to wreak havoc upon mankind.
Now, man is no longer the supreme being on this planet.
The organism is growing at a geometric rate. By all accounts, it's at least 1,000 times its original mass.
Somehow, mankind always survives as well. For the most part, Earth's atmosphere protects the planet's inhabitants, you and me, from such incursions. Forget aliens for the moment. Meteors generally burn up in the atmosphere before ever reaching the surface and inflicting damage. The average shooting star is made by a particle about the size of a grain of sand. Larger ones, such as the meteor over Chelyabinsk, Russia in 2013, don't survive in whole. So how could you expect an out-of-control alien craft to do likewise? The physics were borne out when astronaut John Glenn, after orbiting Earth 3 times in 1962, endured a fiery re-entry. Those in mission control monitored the Mercury capsule's heat shield, where a sensor indicated the shield was loose and might come off. The sensor eventually was determined to be faulty, but for Glenn, it was a bumpy ride.
Re-entry was really scary on Friendship 7 because ground control thought that the heat shield was loose. This was not actually true, but mission control could not prove that it wasn't true. So they told Glenn to leave the retro package on through the first part of the re-entry. They were hoping that the retro package would hold the heat shield in place. He knew that this was not the usual procedure, but Glenn couldn't do anything. He has no control over the re-entry other than to make sure that he's pointed in the right direction. If you're hitting the atmosphere at 17,000 miles an hour, you're pushing a shockwave ahead of the heat shield. That shockwave is heated to thousands of degrees because of the friction. So he had this very dramatic re-entry where these big flaming pieces of this thing came by the window as he was coming in.
Feeling pretty well? My condition is good, but that was a real fireball, boy. I had great chunks of that retro pack breaking off all the way through.
For astronauts re-entering the atmosphere, gravity pulls the capsule down. Drag comes into play as the capsule rubs against the air, creating friction. Air resistance creates the drag, slowing down the capsule. The next time you sit down to watch your favorite movie,
For the experience,
What action? What passion?
the motion picture, The Lobster Man from Mars.
It's the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life.
just enjoy the offering.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And remember, my friend, future events such as these will affect you in the future.
Keep this in mind. Yelling at the protagonist in a horror film not to open that door never does any good. So yelling at the characters to pay attention to the science, that'll probably go right over their heads as well. The question is, if the science isn't there, Should the characters have a fair chance to survive there either?
Bring you a warning. Every one of you listening to my voice, tell the world. Tell this to everybody wherever they are. Watch the skies, everywhere. Keep looking. Keep watching the skies.